Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine with my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced bony soldiers.
That's right. So a friend of mine had said, I think one time I was on one of these calls or something like that, and I didn't have this background. They said, hey, you're not in the Reed Irvine studio. So I think I'll call this the Reed Irvine studio from now on.
There you go.
It's not much of a studio, but it's close enough, right?
Dad would be proud.
All right. Well, we have lots of news. All right. So just to a couple of things here. We have Veterans Day coming up tomorrow. So we're seeing a lot of news about that. There was actually an interesting story I saw, and I didn't really follow up with it. That for the first time ever, people can go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and lay flowers.
Yeah, I think I saw that too.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of interesting. I had never even thought about that, having visited as a child and whatnot, but that's kind of a neat thing.
Yeah, it is, and I think it's a good move to sort of reattach us to those. Like when my dad graduated from high school in 1946, he barely missed World War II. He joined the Army because he knew he was going to get drafted, right? So at that time, I mean, military service was almost expected, right? You were going to find something you could do for a couple of years to help the country. And now, there's no draft, and we don't, we're smalling down the military. We don't really actually need all that many people to do what we do anymore. When we need bulk of people, we use guards and reserve forces. So, the notion that someone in the military, someone working their way up, or it used to be a common thing. Almost every family was connected to someone involved in that. And now, it's not that way. It's very much the other way, where you don't really know. So, it'd be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. I'm sure the lefties will squawk about, why are we glorifying war fighting? And, you could hear their lines coming, right? But, things that reconnect us to like how we got here, and the tremendous blessing it is to live in America and how that was achieved, I think are important. I think this is a time in our history where they're even more important than usual.
Yeah, no, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And so this was a good news story there too. And then I didn't have it down last night, but I saw this morning. So today is the 246th birthday of the U.S. Marine Corps.
That's right.
So Semper Fi. My father was a Marine, and so you're always a Marine, I guess is what they say, right?
That's right. There's no former Marines. Once you
Marine.
go through that, you've gone through that. Started at Hun Tavern in Philadelphia. If you go back and look at it, that's where they, and Marines, I mean, that's a special kind of brand, right? There's one thing to join the military. It's another thing to put yourself through that. So, thank goodness we have people who embrace that challenge.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. All right. So the infrastructure bill has now passed. For whatever it's worth, I mean, there's a lot of money. I mean, it's, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi think they've got a huge, big win here in all of this, but they still have a bigger problem with the next bill that they're trying to get through. I think they're on recess until the middle of the month. So we've got a few more days before they come back, I guess, and then try to attack that. But I mean, now that it's passed, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, Biden has not signed it. And there's some speculation out there about why. It's like it should have been signed by now, right? It's been passed, completely passed in final form by both houses of Congress, and it's presented to him. So, he gets to running on this too long, you get to pocket veto, right? After a certain amount of time, it's kind of automatically vetoed. And they certainly do not have the votes to overcome a veto, right? Override a veto. So interesting stuff. It's about $1 trillion. Most of what they they had to trim down in some way or another. Almost every objective in the bill got its money cut at some point as this was being negotiated. Started out as a $2.1 trillion bill. There's some road bridge money in there. That's the biggest expense of it. There's also build out broadband. I don't know. I kind of go both ways on that because there are some places in the country that are not going to be connected if you're waiting on or it could be indefinitely before it happens if you're waiting on somebody to see a profit margin in it, right? So the government's looking and saying, hey, we're going to put tax dollars toward solving this, ending this problem, right, and bringing broadband to these areas. The taxpayers can vote those guys out, but I don't think that that's the wildest thing government's ever attempted to do. At some point, and like electricity, all those things, as these technologies have come online, it's been a mix of public and private that pushed them out to the entire country. Now, like the whole country is wired for electricity now, pretty much, right? But though there's big swaths of the country that are not wired for broadband yet, and finishing that project is rather low dollar expense that adds a lot of knowledge and so forth to the world. So that one doesn't kill me. There is there's a big emphasis on green construction and green energy production and so forth in this. It's not going to scale up. When I read these things like, oh, these guys get these subsidies, I'm like, I will join you today in calling on legislation to end all energy subsidies for, fossil fuels, renewables, everything. Let them sink or swim on their own. Yeah, prices might go up a little bit at first, but then the market will take care of that in a way that assures more reliability than what we have now. So most of it, I wouldn't have voted for it. I think that Republicans went and gave these people a political win when they were really down in the dumps. If they lose that vote, which they would have lost it without the 13 Republicans who jumped sides, right? They 7 of them voted against it, and that would have been enough to sink that bill. I mean, you could have had a huge political victory, but a group of moderate Republicans saved them.
Yeah, I mean, all good stuff there. I mean, I was looking and reading, about kind of, one of my pet peeves is this, are these charging stations, because for me, I just can't for the life of me see how this actually is something that's really going to work out for everybody long term. The article I was reading,
and that's an example though. That should not be a government function. Like how we get our cars powered up to run. That's something they got to get out of because they're not ever going to deliver that service more efficiently than the market.
Yeah, and look, and you just mentioned subsidies. I mean, electric cars have got have had since the time they started, they've had subsidies out the wazoo to get people to buy them. I mean, Elon Musk would not be as rich as he is today if it wasn't for the subsidies that got people to buy his cars.
He deliberately targets industries that have big government subsidies, right? Spaceships, right? I mean, he knows where that big government cash spigot is.
Yeah, I mean, look, he started off with Solar City. I mean, lots of subsidies for solar panels. He moves on to the EVs, and now he's onto the space thing. I mean, look, I'll give the guy credit for taking advantage of what is out there. I mean, there's no, the government puts these programs out there, and go ahead and take advantage of them. But one of the things that which has always bothered me, I think, about all this too, is just that as this article was saying, is that the charging stations are kind of a chicken and egg situation because companies don't want to build these out until they know they're going to make a profit. But there hasn't shown to be enough demand to have them used enough to get to that point. So they're kind of in this, stuck in this situation. It's like, yeah, we've got there's a bunch of EVs, on the road, but it's still a very small portion, percentage of all the vehicles on the road. So
what if the market tells us that EV is not the way to go, right? Because there's some evidence, growing pile of evidence that that's not the way to solve our problem. It gets us less emissions from cars, right? But where does that power come from? You're going to have to go back to pretty heavy presence of coal in the U.S. power mix if you're going to triple or quadruple or whatever it is the demand for electricity, whatever cars would bring, right?
Right. I mean, and that's always been, I think, we both know that that's kind of the dirty little secret about all this, these green things, these EVs, is that the power is coming from somewhere, and there's no way you can power, you can charge your car at your home by just using solar power alone, type of a thing, right?
Right.
So,
right.
there's going to be, the quote dirty energy in there somewhere to create this electricity so that you can charge your car. But the industry and government has sold people on. It's like, no, this is great. We're going to go, emissions free by 2050. Where it's going to be all this la-di-da, it's paradise, whatever. It's going to be all fine. But all the other stuff that's behind us, like nobody talks about this.
That's right. That's right. And they don't have the infrastructure. The car engines. I mean, you still have a problem of, you have to charge them for a long time, right? You don't just pull up. It's not like gas where you pull up and you pump it full and you get back in and go, right? It's, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're waiting on the car to charge back up. So like when, I'm driving to Louisiana, I think I would have to stop 5 times or so for 2 hours each to charge my car, right? I only go there, once or twice a year. Most driving is local, right? But you're adding 10 hours to that trip, and that's not an atypical trip. There are a lot of people out there driving those kind of distances. So
and that's why I think with a lot of the EVs that people like these people I met a couple of months ago, and they drove their Tesla from California to here to DC, and they're going to be here for a year and a half or whatever it is. It's a little bit in California. They probably have, they're very green on a lot of things. They can probably find ways of charging. And plus, if they had a home, they're now right now temporarily living in an apartment complex. Another issue is like, how do you charge your car if you're living in an apartment complex? Most people charge their cars overnight. That's the best way to do it. In the meantime, they would stop on the way, and then charge up for maybe half an hour or so, get enough of a charge until they move on. Now, the cars apparently have this system where it tells you where the charging stations are. But as you said, I've been trying to visualize this of, how many charging, stations in terms of just the units themselves do you have to have at a place to meet the potential demand that might come up, as we get more. You're going to have a bunch of cars sitting around for 30 minutes to an hour to 2 hours as they're waiting around. And then they pull, say they're a little bit low and they pull up, and it's like every single one of those suckers is occupied. What do you do? That it's not like you go across the street and go find the next one like a gas station, with a lot of these places when you're driving along the road. It's like you may have to go another 50 miles or more, and your car may not have enough juice to get there. I just see this is still not a workable solution.
We're not there on it. Yeah, I'm thinking about those. Down in Texas, they have those Buc-ee's. You ever seen those?
Oh yeah, I've seen. This is on the Buc-ee's is on my bucket list.
So you'll go to Buc-ee's. There'll be 75 or 80 gas pumps, right? And every one of them, there's a car lined up there getting gas. So, how do you replicate that in with electric cars, right? Because every one of those people is sitting there 30 minutes. So what about the people who come, 2 minutes later or 4 minutes later? Those pumps are full. We sat, Mary Catherine and I watched one from across the highway, and we ate dinner one night. We were in Texas last summer, and we were just watching it. It's like eye-popping, watching those, 75 pumps, and every one of them is full. And as soon as somebody pulls out, somebody else pulls in, right? So how do you do that if the people sitting there are there for at least 30 minutes and maybe 2 hours? I mean, the backups would be, horrendous. I mean, no one would do it. So we're a long way from it. We're a lot more than 14 years from being ready to be an electric car society, And I would argue that cars are not
Yeah.
close to our problem, but so I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I
think
just,
that reality is going to kiss that one pretty soon.
and right, and they still haven't really solved the issue with the batteries in terms of what do you do when the battery finally gives out, the lithium battery, because
Right.
it's and we've seen the car fires from some of these things. I mean, a lithium battery catching on fire, not good, not
Yeah,
good at
and you
all.
can't. There's nowhere to store them. There's nowhere to dump them. I mean,
Yeah,
you're creating a a problem that's way bigger than the problem you're trying to solve with it.
yeah, and I don't have a problem with if you want to have EVs as part of your force or whatever as part of the mix, that's fine. Let people choose. Don't there shouldn't don't have these subsidies to push them and force them into this situation. Let them look at their own situation in terms of affordability, how much they're driving, they're doing, where all these things are, and let the market. I mean, we're free marketers. Let the market take care of this. And the government,
Right.
as you said, the government should not be in the business of doing this. I mean,
Right. And because here's what happens. Okay. So what we're talking about are some problems that are pretty daunting to using electric cars, right? But people who solve those kind of problems, they're out there and they would solve those problems. But now you're going to say we're going to lock in the solution level where it is right now. We're saying, okay, with present technology, what would take to pull this off, and that's what we're going to do. So, what is the incentive to keep advancing the technology? Right? At some point, if you want electric cars to be a thing, you're going to be way more charging capacity, and it's going to have to happen way quicker than 2 hours. Right? It's got to be that way. And so right now you're telling the market, don't worry about those innovations. We're going to dumb this down to where your current inadequate innovation rules the market, right? So if you want things to advance, back government out of it, make the people advance it. I mean, there's smart people out there who will figure out how to handle this battery situation.
Yeah, I mean, and I just think about the overall thing too about you're now asking for more power to be drawn off the grid. We've talked, we've seen this, that the grid has got some real problems in it that have to be resolved, and now you're trying to force all these electric vehicles and all this extra power draw. It's like this, once again, it's typical of government. It doesn't really make any sense. But I'm not shocked at it either.
But,
It's
but this is, government does a lot of nuts things, but this one is pretty darn extreme, even by their lofty standards.
right. I also want to go back to a couple of things you were talking about before too, about the broadband versus the electricity deal. I mean, I guess we can call what the Rural Electrification Act is a big deal in terms of getting America electrified. I mean, otherwise, how are you going to get America electrified? Who wants to go to the boonies and do that? And so this is the problem, as you kind of alluded to with the whole thing with broadband, is that, and we saw what a big problem this was during the pandemic when everything tried to go virtual. But if you lived a little further out, there's a good chance you are not going to have broadband, or you were going to have very unreliable internet service of some other kind, and it was pretty bad. So yeah, I'm kind of with you that in terms of trying to bring more of this to more people, not a bad thing. It's not actually a bad government program. It's just that, like with a lot of other things, is that we just see a lot of these programs just kind of take on their own life, and we just talked about the charging stations, but there's so much stuff that goes in there. It's like, how much money do we really want to pour into Amtrak exactly? What's the real fix there? And you can just go down this litany of things. But then the other thing too is just that, I've been scratching my head about these 13 Republicans, but they are in that more moderate wing kind of a thing like this. And you got people like Kinzinger, what has he got to lose at this point, right? I mean, he's
Right.
leaving.
It's a lot of people in that situation, the what do you have to lose situation. John Katko from New York, he's not going to be back. There was two or three others that, Anthony Gonzalez from Ohio, he's already retired because, he can't raise any money anymore because he's a never Trumper. So you have, they're snuffing these people out. There's probably of its own volition, about 6 or 7 of those 13 people won't be back next time anyway. And, it's up to Republicans to go primary and get rid of the rest. Because, this was a breach of party discipline that, if this is acceptable, then you can get away with anything. So,
yeah. So yeah, they definitely gave the Democrats a win there in that sense. But in some regards, it may be too little, too late for a lot of things. We just had those elections in New Jersey and Virginia. Wasn't great for the Democrats. Phil Murphy apparently is holding on, but nevertheless, Republicans made some great strides. Some people have tied that to the fact that the Democrats' inaction in Congress can be blamed for some of that. But the Democrats are a mess, at least in Congress.
Right. The other thing that's happened that's going on with this is there's a lot of speculation out there that now that this one has passed, it's easier for Manchin and Sinema and whoever else wants to walk away from the other one, which is really the one that's a lot of social engineering and the other one is way worse than this one. This one's bad, but that one is several orders of magnitude worse. And there's a lot of speculation out there that one's chances went down when this one passed. So maybe it wasn't as bad as we think.
Yeah. I think sooner or later they were going to get an infrastructure bill passed because it's difficult.
We need the infrastructure, right? There's look what happened in Memphis last year. Okay, so Memphis, there's 2 bridges basically that serve the Memphis area going over the Mississippi River, and one of them was, one day it's working fine, and the next day you cannot drive on it, right? So, and they, if you look at what was wrong with it, yes, it had to be done, it had to be stopped and fixed, and then it was like that for months, and so. The city of Memphis, like you had to just drive through the streets of the city. There was no freeway to correct this problem on, right? So you just routed, traffic through some of your poorest and, most traffic congested neighborhoods of the whole city to get to the other bridge so that people could cross over. So, it was quite a thing for Memphis. And that was just one little bridge. That was, well, it's not a little bridge, but one bridge that snarled the entire town for months on end. So, I don't argue that we have a need for some infrastructure repairs. I think that the Biden administration, to the extent they can be believed, said 45,000 bridges need immediate repair, and there's about 600,000 miles of federal highway that are critical need of repair. So. We'll see what happens. But if, the other problem is Obama passed a bill like this and, the money never made it to the shovel ready projects. Right. So if we have shovel ready projects, I think the thing for Democrats to do would be to follow this money, if and when Biden signs the bill and, make sure that it goes where it's supposed to go, because these things end up being grab bags, as you know.
Right. Yeah. That was the other thing too. So what you mentioned about the fact that he hasn't signed it yet, I have been puzzling over this too. It's I would have thought that as soon as it had passed the House, that would, within 48 hours, it would have happened just like that. They wanted this thing so badly, and here we are in the middle of the week, and still nothing, and no, we don't really have a sense of to when it will be signed. So it's kind of what in the heck is going on now? What is their line of thinking? It's very strange. And once again, as far as infrastructure, look, it doesn't take much for any politician on any side of the aisle to point to crumbling roads and bridges. The Memphis situation, wasn't it in Minneapolis a few years ago? We had a big one.
It was a Mississippi River bridge too.
Yeah, so we've seen some tragic consequences of this. And I know I've mentioned this before. I'm pretty sure, in terms of money to fix these things is supposed to come out of these transportation budgets that have been funded with these, gas taxes and all these kinds of things. But politicians, they love to raid the transportation fund and leave it bare and throw it to some other programs. And so then there's not enough money to keep the basic roads, up to snuff. And then things happen. Look,
one political party actively is against highways, right? They don't want you driving anyway.
That's right. But I mean, if you're in the colder climates, they're still struggling with how do you treat the roads in the bad weather, trying to find something that doesn't harm the road, doesn't decay the road surface. But this is tricky. Then you wind up with these weird things like we have in Montgomery County, these brine solutions and stuff like that they pre-treat the road with, that really is not very effective. So if you could use the road salt, which really does a great job, but it's not great for the road overall, the road, their condition, the health long term. But then you can use something that's less harmful, but it's also less effective, which is what we see in a lot of cases, that these alternatives for a lot of things, you can think about just about anything probably in life, the alternative tends to be not as good as the original thing, but
Right.
environmentalists don't like the salt thing, because they worry about runoff and all these other things. You get into a whole big environmental argument with people, everywhere you turn. It's like, okay, look, we're humans. We are born. We will eventually die. We will die from something, and the, my father was always like, well, if you live a good life, you need to enjoy your life, right? Kind of
Right.
a thing. But you don't need to alter it so much that, oh, I'm going to avoid this. I'm going to avoid driving on this road because I put rock salt in it. Might get into some stream, blah 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 blah. I don't know. I mean, it's just the whole thing with the world we're in just seems to be a little bit crazy sometimes with this heavy handedness by the environmentalists.
Right.
All right, so yeah, anyway, so now I want to just move on here also to this. I thought this was kind of funny. So I think we talked about this a little bit last week about Biden, the reports that came out about the $450,000 going to be paid to illegal families for the child separation, the terrible child separation of the Trump administration. And then Biden says that's not going to happen. And then
That's not what he said at first. Okay.
yeah.
He's like, hey, tell us about this $450,000 deal, Mr. President. And do you know what he said? What? Holy. Okay. He did not know that this was in the works, right?
Right.
So then he's like, there's no way we're doing that. And then a couple of days later, he's like, well, yeah, we are doing that. Right. We don't know about everybody will get $450,000. But my thing is this. What is the justification for giving $1 in this? I mean, explain it to me. I'm not convinced that there's no possible explanation that would move me on this issue. It's possible you could tell me what you're doing, and I would say, okay, all right, I see it. But I haven't heard it. I haven't even heard an attempt at why we're giving people who tried to sneak in the country $450,000. Now, have you? I mean, I haven't even heard. What is their explanation? Because it's like, you robbed a bank, right? And they kept your gun after they found the gun. The cops, paying rent on the gun. The cops are paying the criminal rent on the gun. Go, hey, we do have your gun over here that you used to rob the bank, right? So I mean, that's what we are. This is, they are paying back for loss suffered while they were committing a crime against the United States, right? The expenses that we are replacing were expenses that these people put out to break U.S. law, right?
Yeah,
and,
no.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I just don't see it. I don't understand why we would do that.
Yeah, I mean, the attitude here seems to be that, okay, so these families they're suing the government for this separation, pain and suffering and emotional distress or whatever, all that kind of stuff that they throw into that bucket. But I'm with you. I'm like, wait a minute. It's like, I want to know. I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer. It's like, exactly what kind of standing do these people have when they came into this country illegally anyway? I mean, what is their right to sue the U.S. government when they're here on an illegal basis anyway? That they have the right, that you're giving them the right to sue the government for separating kids and parents, apparently, and that you're going to give them up to $450,000 because you're like, it's cheaper than actually going to court with them because the jury could award them even more money. I'm like, okay, to me, this is that's a legal system problem also that is broken.
Right. I mean, a jury would reward them money for breaking into the country. You know, I don't. What jury would do that, right? How do you explain? Okay, didn't this all start with you breaking the law? You know, I mean, why don't you just argue that? I think, part of it is, as you sit here and talk about it, think about it, the government has no enthusiasm for making the arguments that would win the case, right?
Right.
They don't want a court transcript that says, hey, you were doing something illegal and we caught you. That doesn't mean we owe you money, right? They can't have, a big long court record of that being said over and over in these cases. So to assuage their guilt, get them out of their little difficult political quandary, they're going to give them $500,000. I mean, it's incredible. There's no basis. There's no, parallel to this ever in history.
And where does this end? Okay, I mean, if you allow them to do this, I mean, does that not still send, just like we've talked about before in general about, with Biden coming into office, sending a signal to people in other countries is like, we're open, come on over, whatever, we're not going to throw you back to your home country or whatever, kick you out. Does this not also send a potential signal to these people? It's like, yeah, come into the country and then go ahead and file a suit against the government. And the chances are that they'll just give you money to go and walk away and sign off.
Yeah. I mean, you're not disincentivizing breaching the border like this, right? I mean, this is pot of gold if you can get across that, even if you get caught. In fact, it's probably better to get caught.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's, it's just kind of insane. I mean, and yet this is the way our country has been moving, is that people who commit crimes seem to have the ability to go ahead and sue if they get injured while committing a crime. And you're like, you were committing a crime.
Yeah.
Sorry, a homeowner was protecting himself, or a business owner was protecting his property. You got injured, you got shot in the leg or whatever. It's like, and that gives you the right to sue?
Right. No.
No, not in my book, but apparently it works legally, and it just makes me want to pull my hair out. It's absolutely insane what we allow things to happen in this country like that. All right, I don't know. It's just, to me, it's just too much.
We got some ridiculous stuff on here today.
Yeah, I know we do.
One ridiculous comment, subject after another.
All right, so more ridiculousness, which is I know you'll have some things to say about January 6th, these subpoenas that are being issued to Trump associates. I think Stephen Miller, Kayleigh McEnany. I mean, I think there are a few others. They seem to be throwing out these subpoenas, trying to gather all this information from people, but. I mean, my opinion about this whole thing is it's such a doggone witch hunt, and it's the Democrats, I think, are just doing more damage to themselves by keeping this whole thing up. They've got other problems they need to really be worrying about, and this is just not one of them.
So they're very insular there, right? It's, I think, a big part of Pelosi's job is to, talk to the Democrats about what the country thinks of what they're doing, right? Because they don't always understand it. And I think this is one of those cases. The country has moved on from January 6th. The FBI came out and said, there was no big conspiracy. No one was trying to overthrow the government. It was just, disparate knuckleheads doing what they do in the Capitol. And before that, there was a rally where the president spoke, right? And that's all this was. That they didn't try to overthrow the government. Nobody had a gun, right? No one looted anything. No one threatened the actual seats of power, right? And so, what is it they want Kayleigh McEnany to tell them? What is it they want Stephen Miller to tell them, right? Oh, such and such went down. We were going to go over the, transom and go take the country. I'm going to, Kayleigh's going to, knock Jen Psaki out of the briefing room, right? That's her job. Like, go wrestle Jen Psaki to the ground and take back over, I mean, that's nonsense. The whole thing is nonsense. So, it's all performative. I guess Bannon has asserted, and I assume the others will, privilege. Bannon got one unfavorable ruling, but it's been stayed. So, he's still alive on that. The other thing about this is, the House of Representatives, they have subpoena power in order to conduct oversight over people they're supposed to be giving money to, right? I mean, if you want the Air Force to get money, you better show up for their hearing and explain what you're going to do with the money you want the Air Force to get, right? That's your incentive to to cooperate with Congress. Okay. But this is not fact finding. This is not oversight of anything, right? This is looks very, very much like an attempt at a criminal investigation. And Congress does not, the executive, enforces the law, not Congress. So, the questions, some of the questions Bannon's raising are constitutional questions, and it's going to take some time to sort out. So now you have this commission that its key witnesses are all tied up in court for years. I mean, this could go on past the end of the Biden administration, which, by the way, it doesn't look like there'll be but one term on that one, right? I guess there was a poll this week where like 60% of the people said don't even run again. Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at the polling. It's like the history of the polling of of Biden and Trump, and like on the Rasmussen poll, okay, and people were like, oh, the Rasmussen poll pumped up Trump. Well, it's also pumping up Biden, right? All these other polls you see there, Biden's approval level is 38%, right? Rasmussen has never had Biden below 40%. It had him at 40% yesterday. So Biden has already had 21 days at 42 or below in what, 9 months. Trump had 5, 8, 26, 28, 54 days at 42 below, 28 days at 42 exactly. Okay, so Biden has a third to a half of what Trump has in negative polling in 9 months. So I mean, he has a chance to out negative Trump in the polls.
Yeah, that in and of itself is something I did not see happening. Especially, I mean, we're talking about now we're at what, 9.5 months or whatever it is now. It's amazing how badly he has performed in such a short period of time. But
and ideas are getting baked in, right? It's like it's going to get to a point, where I mean, you're looking at him, you're saying, okay, he's incompetent on stuff, right? He is, this is not something that's going to get fixed. This is not, once a couple of bills pass or whatever, he'll start easing back up. They're bumbling and they're going to keep bumbling. So, I don't know. It's pretty dark for him right now. And I don't know what makes it better. This bill didn't turn it around much, and the other one's starting to seem out of reach.
Yeah, that was the thing too, is that I haven't really looked at polling post signing of the infrastructure bill. It might give him a little bit of a lift, but I think at this point in time it becomes pretty negligible, so that it doesn't provide the oomph that it would have had 7 or 8 months ago, type of a thing like that, if they'd gotten it off the bat. So yeah, I don't think that's working out very well for them. And Bannon, he's quite a character. When you said Bannon, I forgot. So I saw this. I remember there was a story. I think it was in the Daily Mail, and I still have an old Google thing that when my name comes up, it's supposed to tell me my name appeared somewhere. Now I also share my name with some kind of horse jockey, so I get a lot of Google alerts for this horse jockey, which is pretty funny. But when it was like a week ago or a week and a half ago, I can't remember what it was anymore, but it popped up, and I don't get that many of them. And so I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. I looked at it, and it was a photo credit in the Daily Mail online, because years ago, when the Heritage Foundation had those bloggers briefings on a regular basis, Bannon was there. And I took a lot of pictures during the time I attended those things, and I put them up on Flickr and just made them common license, kind of thing like that. And sure enough, it's a photo that I'd taken. I don't even know how many years ago it was.
Oh, wow.
But part of the thing is that Bannon, it's not the first time the Bannon photo has been used by others, particularly before Trump, because trying to get pictures of Bannon were almost impossible. He rarely appeared in public, and my photos were like some of the only photos of him in public.
Well, he had he used to have the parties. I don't think he still does that. He had that, what they called the Breitbart Embassy or whatever. He had this big house over there on Capitol Hill.
That's right. Yeah, it was a big deal. That's right. Yeah.
I remember that. I went one time to one of those, and it was about this time of year, maybe a couple of weeks later in the year. So like mid to late November. and it was cold.
Did they have it? They had it at a house or something like that, right?
Yeah, and he's there, and he's got like, you know, a short sleeve button down shirt, and it's buttoned down halfway, and shorts, and cargo shorts. And I mean, it's 35, 40 degrees. This guy is standing out there. He doesn't have anything on. You know?
He sounds like my youngest son who will wear shorts in some of the coldest weather, and we're always
My
like,
son
oh,
does that too.
yeah, you just like,
Like,
oh man,
okay.
it's
At
like,
some point, you'll see the problem with that, and you'll fix it. And you know, me lecturing you is not going to help. You know.
yeah, I'd never bothered. I'm just like, okay, they're just going to do what they're going to do. Yes, at
Right.
some point in time, they're going to realize it's like, yeah, I'm actually cold.
Yeah, I can fix this. It's within my means to fix it.
All right. So now moving on to this. So the court, I guess this is the latest decision. I haven't looked to see if it got updated. Court had basically blocked the large employer vaccine mandate from going to an effect. So I did see something or heard something that the administration was still saying like, oh, we're still going to go ahead with it anyway. But
well, they're gearing up to enforce it, and so they're still saying we're going to gear. It doesn't start until January 4th or whatever.
Right.
So, you know, they're saying we're going to continue preparations for January 4th until, you know, we get something more permanent than you know, a stay by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Okay, so the stay was issued Friday, right? And then they've asked for an answer from the government yesterday, and the defense, the other people have to respond by today. So by the end of today, the court will have been briefed again by both sides on, you know, why it should or should not lift the stay. And you know, the way the court ruled what it ruled the other day, it's going to be a pretty high bar for the government. The stay will probably stay. There's serious legal and constitutional problems with what the government is trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing this too. I mean, there's a few my Facebook friends type of thing like that saying that I just got notified by my employer that if I don't get vaccinated by December 31st, I'm out of a job. You know, I'm furious. You know, it's like, yeah, why should this have to be a dictate, you know, from the government about this kind of thing, especially at the stage we're at? I mean, you know, we're what, you know, a year, more than a year and a half into the pandemic. We have the vaccine, we've got booster shots, things are, you know, people are gathering, and we're not seeing these super spreader events that the media used to worry about before. It seems that, you know, we're learning how to cope and deal with the virus, and yet the government's coming in here and kind of putting their thumb down and say, you have to do this.
Yeah, you have to do it this way, and you know, you don't have to do it this way, and they're wrong to order it that it be done this way. This is one where, you know, the market, so to speak, has really produced some good answers here. You know, Florida and Texas did not do what New York did, right? New York is like, oh, you know, cordon all these people off and do this and that and the other, and regulate the heck out of everything. Florida and Texas said, you know, virus gonna virus, let it run its course, and they've gotten better results. You know, New York has more cases than Florida and Texas combined. And both of those are now bigger states than New York, population-wise. So, you know, freedom works, and it's really worked in this. But yet, that's what the government is attacking here: is freedom, is the freedom to make your own judgment about this. Me taking or not taking this vaccine doesn't make any difference to whether you will get COVID, and that's what the government needs to acknowledge, right? It just doesn't. They say it does, but it doesn't. And you know, there's breakthrough cases. There's, you know, you can still get it and give it if you're fully vaxxed, even with boosters, right? In fact, after the booster, you know, you become for a short time even higher risk, right? Until your viral load goes back down. So, I think that they're on the wrong track here, and I hope the court sticks with what it's doing. I hope it needs to happen at a lower court level, because I do not at all trust the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, to do the right thing on this. Which brings me to the, you know, where to you does Federalist Society stand on picking judges? If a Republican won in 2024, would we pick judges the same way that we did under Trump? I don't really think so, right?
Yeah.
I think there's been some serious questions about the judges that these guys picked for Trump, and I don't know that they would be back at the table.
Well, we definitely haven't seen. I mean, we always kind of hope that we're going to get these very strong conservative justices, and that they will vote. Most of the time, 90% of the time or better. The way and we're not really seeing that. We've seen a lot of wavering, a lot of other things, and so it does make you wonder about what is the standard going to be. Say what Republicans have a shot at. Choosing further justices. I don't know. I mean, I think they have to take a look at that. It's they're still better than some other justices and some other Republican presidents, but it hasn't worked out exactly the way that we had thought it would in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, Kavanaugh and Barrett are, close to David Souter territory right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, in your opinion on the vaccine, on the mandate too, I mean, what difference, if any, do you see between government issuing rules about government workers working government buildings versus the private sector?
Well, I mean, I think the whole thing is problematic. You're telling people what to put in their body. It'd be one thing if you're saying, okay, smallpox, you have a 15 or 20% death rate, and if you take the vaccine, you have no death rate, right? That's not what this is, right? This vaccine does not guarantee you won't get it again, right? It may even be working in the opposite direction. Some now say it may make you more susceptible, especially more susceptible to having a serious case. So, I think the liberty question is government shouldn't be telling you to take these shots at all. So, whether you work for them or not, I guess they do have more, in theory, and more control over their own workforce. But, my understanding of the legal doctrine of this is that it has to be necessary. And at some point in this, we're going to have to litigate whether these vaccinations are necessary. And if they're found to be necessary, then, we're all in trouble. It's going to be hard to not be forced to do it. But I don't believe they can prove they're necessary. I think that, the fact is, like you were talking about, all these football games, there's 100,000 people there. No one's wearing a mask, or very few people are wearing a mask. And they're not super spreader events. People are not dying, right? At some point, when does the data enter the conversation, right? And not the cram down, not the big government dictate, but the actual data of what we're getting out of this. Because, I don't think they can win that battle. I definitely don't think they can win it in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, well, I think the data has become very inconvenient for them.
Yeah, and now you Los Angeles Times yesterday, big story on that the vaccines lose their effectiveness in a very short time, and it's like we're talking 6 to 8 weeks. So now, you're going to take those shots every 6 to 8 weeks for the rest of your life? I mean, is that does any other vaccine ask you to do that? Right? No, right? Smallpox, I did that when I was a kid. No one's talked to me about smallpox since then, right?
Right.
So,
well, yeah, and we like this guy that was at church on Sunday. I mean, he was telling his, he was vaccinated, he wore a mask, he was socially distanced, he's in his 70s, and he got COVID, and he was down for a month. And he basically expressed his amazement. He was floored by this. He was shocked. He could not believe that he had done everything the government had said you need to do, and he still got COVID. It's like, right. Hello.
Right. Yeah, right? They didn't know what was causing it. They didn't know how it was spreading. I'll tell you another one that people don't understand. It's like supposedly only 2 to 4% of the people who have COVID spread it to anyone. Right? Most of us who get COVID, you are not individually contagious. The problem is, the 2 to 4% spread the heck out of it, and you don't know which ones they are, right? You can't really make policy. You don't know who's typhoid Mary and who's not, right? But I mean, so these are the kind of things, though. But when you start thinking about like, how do we deal with this? Can we, attacking that problem, telling which one of us is contagious and which is not could be a huge thing, right?
Absolutely. All right. So we're rounding up here. So let's go into 2 minutes.
Let's see what is dun, 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 dun. I do want to say that uh, the Durham, Special Counsel Durham, is starting to get close to squaring the circle of this the Russia Gate, right? And he's pretty much the people he's indicting. It's looking like that this was a loot that the Hillary campaign paid to feed false information into the intelligence loop so that it would get back and be investigated as a crime, and that everyone all along the line knew what they were getting into. So, if that happens and it really sees the light of day in court, it's going to be a shocking realization of what really happened to the Trump presidency. And, depending on what the timing is, if you're having fantastic revelations in court every day and say, October 2024, it could be a real problem for the Democrats, right? Because they're in a lot of trouble here.
Yeah, and I don't see a lot of the media talking about this, right?
No,
but
can you believe that?
Just shocking news.
Yeah.
I was watching a little bit of CNN at the gym the other day, and they watched the scroll as the closed captioning, and they were saying that on high gas prices, they had stated that there's nothing that Biden can do about this, and like, yeah, you mean like trying to explore more in the United States, like opening up these pipelines? I mean, there's not something. I'm like, ugh, this just infuriates me.
If you don't believe that, then as you say, give Keystone their permit back, give the people in Alaska their leases back, go back to letting people drill on federal lands and see what happens, right? Maybe if there's no effect, then you got us, right? It had nothing to do with supply and demand, and we just got to sit and take it. And big political mistake by us for raising this point that we couldn't prove, but try those things and see what happens, because I feel like that is not going to be what occurs, right? I think that the market would collapse if Trump became president, reenacted his energy policies. Gas would be back down at $1 in a month, right? Yeah. It is policy, and it is Biden's fault.
All right. With that, we will wrap it up, everyone. Thank you.
One more thing.
Yeah.
College basketball is back. Ain't God good?
How's LSU going to be this year?
Well, we'll be fine until at some point the NCAA is going to drop a nuclear bomb on our program. We already know it, and we're just sort of waiting until they do. And at that point, we won't be in good shape at all.
All right. Honest words is always good. All right. As I was saying, thank you everyone for joining us today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America, and we will see